Welcome to the Level Design Podcast. I'm Mark Drew, and with me is Jonathan Wilson from Hangar 13 Studios, and a fantastic guest is Amanda Blatch from DR Studios. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being on the show. Amanda, you've been working as designer, illustrator, generalist, game generalist.
My speciality is pretty much concept art and illustration, but yeah, I have kind of been brought up as a bit more of an art generalist, so yeah.
It's kind of interesting, like all the people that I've been talking to, it actually depends on the company of what they are, because some say, oh, we're a senior designer or a designer, and it really, sometimes I always have to go like, yep, but define designer, right?
And it's what you said though, and I think it's been brought up on the podcast before. It does depend on the studio, but it can also even change on the project. So game level, mission, script designer, system designer, it's all those micro ecosystems, and you have that in art too. Like you have a 3D, 2D, pixel. It's like it all breaks down, but I can guarantee it changes from project to project most of the time as well.
So, with you, Amanda, what kind of stuff have you been working on? I mean, you've been really busy, it looks like. Just even looking at your Twitter bio, it's like STEM ambassador, most influential women in...
Most influential women in games.
Right. Keeping busy, huh?
Yeah, just a little bit. At the moment, mostly busy working on a project that I can't talk about. Game standard. I can't talk about my really cool NDA project, which I can say the genre's sci-fi.
Right. Okay, cool.
That's about it. It's sci-fi. We actually have like jobs up on our page as well for that role.
Oh, okay, so they should go to DR.
Totally refer me.
Yeah.
I'm guessing some nice incentive involved there.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, it's a sci-fi game. Pretty much most I can say about it. But yeah, it's really honing into the type of sci-fi I enjoy doing the most.
Okay, that's cool. I think that helps as well. It's like if it's a genre you really like as well, it's like just working on it, it's so much easier to get more invested quickly, and I guess like put your own spin on things as well. Like because you have an interest, you understand the genre. It's like you understand what people expect from it as well a little bit more. Whereas if you are just like kind of a generalist who's like, oh, I'm happy to work on a sci-fi game, and like you're not super into that like deep level of it, you might not be as invested to go through with it as well.
I mean, I love everything, but
Sci-fi
is that thing. Like it was like Alien and Blade Runner and Event Horizon and stuff like that as a kid and like growing up.
Yeah,
so.
you know, I think the only second person I've talked to that would put Event Horizon amongst those three movies. How important it is, you know. Everyone goes like Alien, Blade Runner.
It's classic horror.
And then you go like classic horror. That's awesome.
Yeah, like I mean. We've all seen the Expanse. I think that's a really
such a good show. Yeah,
back to things like Event Horizon and stuff like that. It's a modernised telling.
Yes.
Yeah. Boy, I have such ideas for like games from the Expanse.
Yeah, like I think the world, like the world of the Expanse, this like lends itself to create this like vast universe that you could explore, and in game context, like from narrative and like world design and stuff like that.
Which games can you tell us about that you've been working on?
It's going to be a weird one because what I'm working on now actually isn't at all similar to the games I was working on. Primarily, we're a mobile studio.
All right.
But we started doing free to play on console, which is where we started stepping up our graphic fidelity to match the audience almost.
Yeah.
Was that also just because like there was less technical constraints and stuff like that?
There is definitely a hell of a lot of technical constraints, but we always made to mobile.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, like we kind of nailed that workflow, but then we just moved on to this new project that's aimed for console first.
Okay.
I think everyone's pretty excited to do it. It's our company's first IP given to us rather than in-house IP.
Okay. So it's like you're building something for an existing IP.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your role has been what you were saying earlier, which was it's kind of like a generalist, right? But you dedicate to illustration and stuff, but you've touched in different areas, which always seems to me like a really boon to game production, even though it seems from a level of design, just initially, because you're able to touch all the different areas of the final product, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a background like that, you will understand other people's disciplines. You're not going to be an expert in them,
right?
But you'll certainly have an understanding which can inform the role that you are an expert in.
Yeah.
When I first came into being a artist, it was a bit more 3D modeling, like low poly texturing and all that stuff when we were doing mobile games strictly. But yeah, I think this is the first project I've been on where I've been very solely and only a concept artist illustrator, because even the game before that, where I was primarily concept artist illustrator marketing sort of stuff, I was still tackling UI and UX as a part of that.
Right.
It's kind of like wearing many hats, I guess. I find that's kind of common at smaller studios as well, but I kind of feel that for you as an individual, like working and doing all like the different job roles, like you said, it enhances your understanding. You won't become like a master of it necessarily, but having that understanding informs your, like the conversations you have with these other developers. It forces you to consider other things before you make a decision. Like me as a designer, like I know I have to consider art, I have to consider story, I have to consider sounds, and just having information about how they work a little bit, it makes it easier for me to design a level that has to like live up to the constraints of what's there. So, and
not only in the games industry, in other disciplines, you get much better output, much better product when these different disciplines actually walk half a mile in the other shoes, right? So in web, for example, the big clash that you get is when people design the front end, a nice design that cannot be implemented functionally, right? And they go, oh, this is great. It's like, yeah, but we can't do that. But when you've got teams that know kind of the benefits and limitations of each other, you can then play to each other's strengths.
You can't afford not to. There's too many moving parts in game development, like across all the different disciplines. There's like, depending on, once again, project dependent, like studio dependent, like you get micro disciplines. Like some people have dedicated cinematic teams which need your level or your space built like correctly to house their cinematic, which is worked on externally. And then crossing over with different art disciplines, like you can have like kind of world artists, you can have prop artists as well. Like
for mobile games though, what are the games that you've been working on?
Apart from mobile games, the one we're working on is the only thing that's different from our usual roster. Before this, I was working more on the film and animation circuit.
Oh, okay.
So I've kind of like drifted from graduating to freelancing in this area and then going, I'm going to go back into games.
Okay, I guess if you've like kind of gone that, so did you do games first at all, or did you do movie first?
I'm one of those years where the games courses existed,
but they weren't great.
But they were literally their first year,
right.
So they had no graduates.
Yeah.
So they were like, here, give us thousands of pounds of your money, but we have no proof that this course works yet. You have to just believe in us blindly.
Mm-hmm. And that's a very difficult thing to like spend. Well, apart from the money, right? You're going to have like 2 or 3 years that you're going to be studying that course, and then come out going, I have this piece of paper that.
But what's it worth?
But what's it worth, right?
I mean, I did animation. I mean, that's a pretty standard pathway for when we get into film or games. Then I think.
I guess like what did you find like with the transition between the two? Like so obviously you did movies for a while and stuff like that, and then you came back to games. Did you find anything like that was easily transferable or similar between the two things?
I remember my first week because I was doing a bit of animation for a mobile game, and I didn't understand optimization. So when I baked down my animation, which is a standard for film and not a problem because it's all pre-rendered, it was a huge problem for games because I completely locked down that entire
Yes, optimization. It's
Now I know optimization. I understand it and I appreciate it.
So I think it's like that. It's like you view it as the devil at the start, but you understand it as you go on. You understand why it's important. So all those moving parts can work together, and it still performs. It doesn't run at like a frame a second.
It is totally underappreciated because I know I've seen people that have come from AAA backgrounds try to do low end stuff, and they just it's hard to do optimization to that level in mobile games.
Right. And I guess a new game is going to be, it's a bit of freedom now, right?
It's a lot more freedom. All the glorious polys.
I think it's nice to have that spec jump as well, like especially going from mobile. Because I've worked in like mobile VR before, so to go in now onto like console development side of things and like not. So that you don't have to worry about it, like optimization's still done, it's kind of done in different ways. And it's because you want the extra polys, you want that extra like data to do EI or something like that.
Those shiny shaders.
Yeah, visual effects is usually a big one.
I mean it's big for me because of me knowing VFX from films.
Yeah.
Like I have all these ideas of like how things should look, but it was never really transferable until
you move to
started
console
this
basically,
game,
yeah.
And now it's just like, I want this. Like, yeah, cool, we'll go do
I used to find it's like, could we have this cool effects? This is when we're working on mobile, and it's like, no. Or you could get a downgraded version of it.
And then it kind of loses the whole fidelity. Years ago, I worked in VRML, which was like the beginning of the web, was how to do VR in the web. I say VR, it was like 3D. Because there was no glasses really. I mean, you could probably get stereoscopic glasses, but that was it. And I remember being well proud of optimizing this tree that we designed. So instead of it being a tree, it was actually 2 cards overlapping. And I was well proud because from far, that looked
like a tree.
Awesome. That looked like, I mean, no, it didn't. But I mean, it's like, this is PlayStation 1 era, right? But to me, it looked awesome. And now it's kind of gone full circle because now you're trying to make the graphics to work on mobile. But then again, mobiles are getting so powerful. Like the Oculus Quest, I played Robo Recall on it the other week. And I remember playing Robo Recall on the Rift itself. Which was fantastic. It was beautiful rendered graphics, but on the Quest, it looks pretty damn good. And if I hadn't played the other one, I wouldn't be able to tell you the downgrading graphics. And that's a mobile processor, so...
The Quest is quite an impressive bit of kit. It's like, I know if you speak to any developers for it, is a little bit painful to develop for sometimes, and it is usually the optimization that we touched on before that you've got.
Which you probably come from background. Know that.
I know everything.
Yeah.
Please don't take that away.
But it definitely gives you a bigger appreciation of optimization. Like if I hadn't worked at like indie studios or on mobile platforms, like I doubt I would have the same appreciation and understanding for optimization, which now influences how I even do logic in missions and stuff like that.
More successful as a designer, I
Yeah.
imagine, as well, because you know something other people that might be in that industry don't know because they haven't needed to worry about it.
Yeah. It also means towards the end of a project, like once everything's done and you're just trying to get it to kind of run, you can go back and you can work with like coders or like system designers or whatever and try and like find the root of the problem and help optimize those certain areas as well.
I was chatting with someone a game that was ported to the Switch, and they said it wasn't actually a problem compared to everything else. There was an Unreal Engine game, and they just had to reduce the density of the dynamic lighting shadows, right? They just had to do that, and then that worked, right?
It's still not flicking a switch, but it's like sometimes games will have that silver bullet. There'll be one thing that is super inefficient, and sometimes just fixing that one thing is enough to get it to at least run on device. Yeah. It's very rare, but it's like if you get that, then count yourself lucky, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, for me as an artist, usually that thing where it switches, yes, it solves the issue.
But it degrades the art.
It degrades the art, and you're better off optimizing that art yourself to get it to look as good as it can for that, rather than just allowing
someone to decimate it, basically. Because you're right. If you lose, like obviously, even though you're doing a mobile game, you still want it to look as good as possible, right? Yeah. But it's obviously within the limitations. So it's usually about coming up with like, it'll affect your choice of art style. So like you'll see a lot of mobile stuff is kind of like hand painted. It's kind of like solid colors and things like that, and a lot of it is what I found anyway, at least on the mobile projects I've worked on, a lot of it's texture work, at least from the art team. It's never high detailed models because you can't really get away with that, but it's surprising now what you can get away with clever texturing to make something look the way you want it to.
And if you do try and do really like high density detail in mobile models, it will never read great across on mobile because it'll be noisy. I mean, I've seen plenty of mobile games, I'm not going to name them, where they've done the high detail process, but they never considered the platforms that it's going to be on. And it would look great on a bigger screen, it just doesn't cut it on a smaller screen.
Yeah. This development to mobile devices, how much is out of a pain to get the art across different devices? Is there much difference between them, or were you aiming for one or two devices?
Usually when we do projects, we would aim for a high-end and a low-end device, but we always make... So it's always easier to go from high to low. So we always make them high, but we get them low ready for mobile, and then if we need them later for something that's a bit, like we can have a bit more expense, then we can actually have that ready to go.
With the mobile development, was it Android or iOS, or was it both?
Both.
both. That's
Pretty
I was,
much everything.
I was about to say that makes it a lot more painful as well. It's like the mobile market. It's like iOS used to not be that bad because there wasn't as many of them. Like there wasn't as many phone models, but Android was always so saturated. Because it's like you've got Sony, you've got Samsung. It's like you're now getting all these kind of like Hawaii phones, the Oppo phones, and stuff like that as well. And they're all just coming out, and they're all different. Sometimes it's very slightly, but they're all different.
At a certain point, I think in our last mobile game, we were just like, right, we're only going to be able to do, because there are so many now, we're only going to have to be able to do the ones with the most user base.
Yeah, which makes sense.
And yes, it does isolate our customer base that don't have those phones, but at the same time, the time investment for like one or two people isn't financially sound.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to target everything. It's like the return you'll get for targeting a certain platform is probably not worth the time it's going to take you to build that version of the game. So
I'm trying to remember who said this, but they broke down some figures on the amount of support versus platform. And as for example, like 2% of the support went to PC, but then you had like 20% for the Linux or Mac OS, but they were like a tiny fragment of the market. So you're like, we're spending all this effort
to maintain these two micro versions.
Right. Well, having said that they could be looking at the Switch, for example, that could be quite an important market, even if it's tiny.
I think, like obviously you brought up the Switch. I think what you're finding now, and it's still happening, everyone's just like, they want everything on Switch, right? But unfortunately, that's not really feasible just to go give me this on Switch. Like for instance, I'm quite impressed they've managed to compress The Witcher 3 onto a Switch. Obviously, like you mentioned before, like art degradation, like if you've seen the footage, it's not as high quality, which obviously is to be expected. But the fact that game is massive. It's like if you've played it, that world is huge. There's a lot of detail in that world. So I'll be interested to see how it actually runs and performs on Switch, like once we actually get our hands on it. So
Yeah, I'm very keen to look at it as well.
it might make me go back. It's like I didn't play all the DLC, so it would give me an excuse to go back. But I did put like over probably 150 hours into it, so I'm like, do I really have time to go back to this game?
I should have been doing more art, but
Witcher took over,
which is good.
It is, it's very good. But I think that becomes the case though. It's like there's so much content now fighting for our attention, not just in games. Like obviously we have genre and genre games, but movies, TV shows, Netflix, books and everything. It's like, and work, life, right? It kind of gets in the way.
Other humans that you should interact with.
Yes, but yeah, like playing a game like The Witcher, like I don't think I've spent as much time with a game since The Witcher 3. I've tried to play smaller games purposely for like that exact reason, but now it's just like, I know there will be another one, but unless it hooks me, I know I'm not going to get to that.
Well, I think they're making another game, aren't they?
Yes, Cyberpunk, it's just that small thing.
Tiny little futuristic game.
I'm hoping that's got the same, it looks like it does, but I'm hoping that hooks me the same way The Witcher did. Like, I am like you, I really like sci-fi stuff, so if it's got the world is as deep as what The Witcher's was and as detailed as what The Witcher's was, then I can see myself losing hours and hours in this game.
Yeah, me too. I've been waiting for this game to come out since I was 19, so you know, I actually played the role-playing game, and then suddenly it's like, you're making
it into a video game.
Like, my teenage self is going, that's me waving my hands around the air, mutely shouting.
I'm super looking forward to it. Like, still always miss Mass Effect. Mass Effect is one of my big ones. It's like, oh no, you haven't played it, but for me, it's like internally, every BioWare game they've released, I've just been ravenously like, give me.
Yeah, so I used to be the same, and like I think like Dragon Age, I was like big into Dragon Age and stuff like that. I never finished Inquisition, unfortunately. I feel like kind of went too long and kind of like too wide. But with Mass Effect, yeah, I did the original trilogy, but I've still not tried Andromeda. I kind of want to, just because it's that world. It's like for me, Mass Effect's world is what interests me.
I never finished Andromeda. I played a little bit, but you could. I can't remember if it is the same team, but it's like well designed, felt the same as Inquisition. Because I know a lot of open world games they tend to have a map and splurge like points of interest around
it to
and
build it up.
Don't consider all the nice in betweens. The nice thing with Inquisition is like you could just go for a jolly and find some random thing.
Stumble across something, yes.
And when you do stumble across it, that area is always so nicely done up, and it's obvious where things are and where
I
A
think
to B and C.
I think Inquisition was probably at least the last BioWare game I played where you got like that feeling sort of thing of you found and discovered all this stuff. It had a lot of content. It was quite a very daunting game.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. Like everything in that game, the design, the character interactions. But most of the characters, some of them I didn't like, but that's the good thing about character writing.
The writing in a BioWare game is meant to do that. Like everyone has like different people they like, they dislike, but it's like to say that about a game. Like there's people like you get in books, response to the character.
It's not a oh I don't like it, it's bad, right? It's because I just don't like that individual, and that is peak.
Yeah, because I guess it used to be like very in earlier games. It was very like black and white. You would either want to just kill this person. Like it wouldn't be like you had a relationship with them. It's like okay, they're either on my team or they're the enemy. Like there wasn't much middle ground there. Like now we question characters' morals, we question their motives and stuff like that, which makes them much more in depth.
Yeah, no, they actually have depth and have agency.
Yeah.
So you touched upon a point there, which was about the bits in between in these massive worlds, and I think it's something really important, which is being able to guide people through these interstitial things. You know my opinions on like the bits between. I've always hated the empty bit between the two important bits, right? I mean, like between A and B, there's a corridor between.
Yeah,
those two,
it's the filler, right? It's the content you go in between, like because it'll be. Typically, the easiest way to describe it, you have a goal, right? And it's like how you get to that goal, and then we use RPGs like we are now as an example, like that you're usually in a world, right? You're in this world that's populated with NPCs or anything like that. Let them interact with you. Like, let them have their own little bits of story. It doesn't have to be super in-depth, but like if they're animating, like even if they're idling, it just makes the world feel more alive than a corridor.
Open world, if you are going from A to B, I always think it should be like, you know that intro song by Belle from Beauty and the Beast, where she goes from her home to the bookshop and all this stuff happens in between?
Right.
That's ideal.
Okay.
World design to me. Like, if there's stories dotted around that can stray you off your path, then...
With that, though, you've got to be careful, because I think it can be easy to put that content in, but if it's very shallow and not interesting, then your world doesn't feel good. But I get what you mean, like making it feel engaging and like.
I mean, one of the big open world games I had, they've fixed it since, so I don't want anyone hitting me about it. But is GTA 5. I had so much fun being in that world. You know, driving around the whole island essentially. But then when I finished it, it really felt empty. There were still cars going around. The police would still chase me.
But you had no, I guess, like
goal.
You had no goal anymore.
I mean, they did fix it with the online stuff and there's loads of things to do. But I remember driving for a while after I finished the whole game, and I was like, yeah, you can go back in. You know, like the credits have rolled, and now you're back in your car. And I'm like, great.
Yeah.
I think I had a different experience to you.
Okay.
I loved that game. It was amazing. I actually never finished the story because I had a crew that I ran around with online.
Right.
And it was amazing. So the shenanigans we got up to were fantastic.
Well, online hadn't come out by this point, but when I finished it, so I'm saying that since online came out,
it's fixed. Yeah.
But that's great that the online has overtaken the actual. They've got a big sandbox that you can really play in.
Especially with other people and get into gang wars accidentally against whales that have tanks.
I think it's like that. Like you said, you do weird shenanigans like that, but you're making your own stories, right? You're playing for crew. You've got this entire playground. You've got this entire city from the single player game that you go through, where you've got this kind of narrative experience to it, like go through and do on that. But once you hit online, because I was the same as you, I played it very early on. Online did not work when I played it originally. Like I got it when it first came out on like PS3 and 360, and then the online didn't really take off until they did the remaster and PC version about a year later.
Okay.
So that's like why some people would have kind of missed the bus on it. And it's just kind of like, do you go back after you've invested X amount of hours already in the game? But yeah, online blew up, and I think it's like my biggest question is, can they recapture the same success with Red Dead Online? It's very different worlds. It's like you can't really jazz up your horse as much as you can jazz up a car. So it's like the customization's a little bit shallower there, but I'd be interested to see how that takes off.
I'm hoping it will give you as many opportunities as GTA had to kind of mess with people. Because I found it was less about customizations for me. It was more just
messing people's
messing
stuff up. Yeah.
people. Not in like the toxic way. It would be like, for example, we did those car heists, or
Yes.
car deliveries you get in GTA. Like, we're just supposed to get the car and go from A to B, but in our crew, because we just wanted to be hilarious, we'd go to the airfield, get a cargo plane that you can. So we have one team that goes to get the car, someone gets the plane, and as they're driving around avoiding everyone blowing them up, we would pick them up in the plane, fly them to the drop point and drop them right outside the door, and everyone would be chasing, like, where the hell are they? Where the hell are they? It's like, we're up in the sky.
Brilliant. I mean, and that's how you do a heist, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's actually really cool, the fact that GTA Online like facilitates that kind of gameplay, right? Like, you didn't have to do any of that, but you made the heist a lot more interesting. Like, if that had been, for instance, a campaign mission, you would have probably had to do that, because it would have been a set piece. You would have been told to go and get this lifted out of a lot somewhere that is heavily guarded and take it away, but all they told you to do was steal a car, and then naturally you guys kind of crewed up and just blew it out of the water.
Yeah.
It's like to turn it into a massive action flick. It's like really a B movie. It just becomes this like AAA action
It
flick.
was insane. We had people organised on the ground taking out cars that were parked outside.
See, like, that's so good. I've got to say, you guys are really good as a crew, because we had a crew for Ghost Recon, and we sucked. The trailer is like, no, one of you will have a helicopter, another one will come in with a tank, and then 2 people will snipe their way in. No, we were like...
They just blow up.
If you imagine the scene, it would be like this quiet camera with... one person guarding an airbase, and then we'd land with like our truck on fire by the time we've got to the location. So like, we suck, but it's fun, right?
I think another good thing about GTA, and like even with Ghost Recon, I prefer like co-op games where I can have a squad, like you described, because you can do that kind of weird, like random stuff, or you can try to be coordinators. I really enjoyed The Division 2. Like, it's a squad-based shooter, definitely a lot better than the original. Because I tried the original, and as much as it can seem the same mechanically, this is a lot fixed. There's a lot of finesse. They ironed out like the kinks with it as well, and it's one of those things where put your headset on, go on with a squad like 2 to 4 or whatever, and you can just go and take point after point. And the world's always super detailed in Ubisoft games. That's like one thing they always do quite well.
This is the problem with games nowadays, says the old man, is that there's some games I just want to stand there looking, and The Division was one of them. Right? It was like I was like standing in the middle of New York and
just looking around.
Just looking around, and people going, we have to go to the base, and I'm like, busy, enjoy, I'm just sightseeing.
Can I just go and take photos?
Yeah. Never mind shooting.
I wish I started playing that game. I keep looking and go, I should play it, and I just go, no time.
So I think it helps if you have like a group or 1 or 2 people that you can kind of play it with, like alongside.
That's the worst thing I do.
Yeah.
I just really don't have the time, because I'm trying more and more these days to have that. This is game time. This is my own time.
Yeah. And that's important.
Escape.
Also, if you have that time and you've managed to get that device, how did you do it? But also, if you can do that, it's like, yes, it's hard to choose what to play, because you've allotted yourself time to do it. But it's the fact, if you've done that, you're still playing games, right? You're not going months on end without playing anything, which is quite usually how my life goes.
That's usually how the games I play work.
Yeah.
Like, you will just throw hours into it. I think my last bad game, I say bad, it was an amazing game, but...
You sunk lots of time into it, basically, yeah.
I think it was like between 400 and 700 hours into Ark Survivor Evolved.
Wow.
That.
That's a lot of time.
I really like dinosaurs.
Ark,
Yeah.
And survival. Survival games are also another thing that I love as well.
Okay, so what's your ideal dinosaur, like, to design or something like that?
Ideal dinosaur to design.
Yeah.
I love them all too much. Something feathery for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm totally into the feathery dinosaurs.
And the colourful dinosaurs, right? Because we don't know what colour they were, but it's like all the evidence coming out that they were like...
They were super colourful.
Super colourful.
I always base them off like actual birds and stuff.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Because it's nice to think there's a link.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what they're saying now. They're linked to birds.
Yeah,
aren't they?
yeah.
So that's the feathers. So why not the same colours? Why not the same vibrancies? The same patterns? Like, you can do so much with it. Rather than keeping it the same old muddy grey, muddy brown, or muddy green.
I guess, like, obviously with your fascination with dinosaurs, what did you think about the creatures in Horizon? Because they were very sci-fi, and obviously they are creatures as well.
See, creatures are definitely the thing that's I love doing the most
Yeah.
when I do concept design. So yeah, I tend to put them more under a microscope.
Yeah.
So it's like there's some things like for Event Horizon, like I quite liked it because that worked for me.
Yeah.
And as when I was younger, like my brain wasn't quite in tune with that yet. I enjoyed this visually. But yeah, I feel like it's kind of ruined like films for me now
Because you overanalyze every. Yeah.
Like I'm super into like anatomy and muscle groups and how things move and what makes sense. And like, let's just say I went to Godzilla and there's some things I wasn't happy about.
Like 1 star out of 5. Why the muscle groups were not right.
The creature misrepresented is not good.
I was just like, could have been done so much better. But for the most part, most of the creations and design was gorgeous.
Yeah.
I loved the update they did to Mothra with the little scythe arms,
Yeah.
stabby, and just fantastic. I love that movie.
Yeah, that's good.
Creature movie fan.
So you were mentioning that there's jobs going for this sci-fi.
This unknown sci-fi project.
Where can people go and check that out?
Go to the main DR Studios website.
Yeah.
We're currently looking for a technical artist and a senior 3D artist. I think we were looking for a level designer, but I'm not sure anymore. The slot might have been filled, but feel free to drop a message in anyway.
Awesome.
I mean, if we grow, there's going to be more room for more people.
exactly.
So if you're on our records and you're good, we'll call you back.
Awesome. And if people want to get in contact with you, where can they go? Twitter?
Twitter's probably the best one.
So what's your Twitter handle?
One's pretty easy. It's @MandyBiz.
Mandy
So Biz, like the old school, like Z at the end, because everything's cool that way.
Everything's cooler with a Z. You can get in contact with us at Level Design FM on Twitter, or show@leveldesign.fm, or throw something at my window or something.
Or at me on Twitter as well, at Omni/. I can answer questions through DM, or we can form more questions for the show. So.
And thank you, Amanda. Thank you for being on the show.
Cheers for having me.
Bye.